take him out. Use any means necessary.
Raise the alarm! Call the reserves! I hear Magnus is pissed. He's calling down all units. Between you and me, I'm glad I'm on construction detail.
I've got the videos. The blood is spilling profusely. Hello, intellectual. Leave feedback on Digital Fairness Act to stop corporations from killing games. Link in the description. Charlie Kirk, a conservative political activist, has been shot dead during a rally. I can't say killing people who you disagree with is the right thing to do. However, I can say that the shooting was staged and it's got inside job written all over it. I've looked at it and undoubtedly there is a cover-up. There is actors, they're manipulating, they've been caught lying, and they were pre-planning before it and rolled out with it. The whole thing is a giant hoax. Charlie Kirk was a paid actor and only a conservative that loves guns as opposed to those sissy liberals could have taken such a great shot with such a common gun. It's all done by Trump's administration to drive the division further and incite more violence against his political opponents. These must be valid arguments since they were used to undermine what happened in Sandy Hook's school shooting. Not only can I not say that it's good that someone would shoot their political opponent, you, and by you I mean people who agree with Kirk's views, can't really say it's bad that he died. And that's because of your religious convictions. If God's all good, all powerful and all knowing, then he knows about all the evil that's happening in the world, has the power to stop it, and has the desire to. And yet it didn't, which means it's all a part of a plan, where out of this one evil, way more good can come. In other words, in order to bring in the best of the worlds, God had to have Kirk die. Just like he lets children die of leukemia and bone cancer, so that their parents can become better people, or causes earthquakes, so that communities can gather around to help people in need. In Doom 3 I talked about how evil people like for instance the Nazis would conduct unethical experiments on humans, and those immoral acts have to be stopped. So now you as a good person come in, apprehend the perpetrator, and stop this and every other instance of this happening. However, people died because of this, people died to give us the results of those experiments, and it would be a double waste of their lives if whatever the evil person learned from all that research would have gone to waste. But therefore, thanks to that, we have a moral obligation to stop those people, and can benefit from the research anyway with clean hands. It happens even here in Shank too, where people are being chopped up to pieces and have their organs sold off on the black market, where they end up saving people's lives. And I'm not saying it's an issue of supply and demand, where people just want to buy organs from black markets. It's that people get sick and there is no one who can help them, and someone makes business off of that. So unfortunately, even though someone dies, those organs go to help someone else. Technically it's a net zero with no benefit, but some evil bastard already killed the guy. What I'm saying is, it was evil to shoot Kirk, but someone has already done it and we can't go back in time to stop it. All we can do is have one less conservative, spewing misinformation, Stone Age morals, anti-intellectualism and anti-science rhetoric. It's also not good to have shot Kirk, because it's not like he's irreplaceable. If he's not doing the rallies, someone else will. You can already find voices on social media saying Charlie was the guy that was always willing to talk and to debate. Of course the issue is he was never the guy willing to change his mind. He was intellectually dishonest and he was only there to push his agenda, not to actually debate and come to solutions and agreements in pursuit of knowledge and bettering himself. As such, he left a legacy behind him that people on the right prop up saying he was a moderate. He wasn't radical, he wasn't extremist, his views were very mild. What were his views though? I've got a list of choice quotes from him here. If I see a black pilot, I'm gonna be like, boy, I hope he's qualified. About black women, they are coming out and they're saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. You had to go steal a white person slot to go be taken somewhat seriously. Or gems like, we made a huge mistake when we passed the Civil Rights Act in the mid-1960s. He thinks the death penalty should be public, should be quick, should be televised. I think at a certain age it's an initiation. At what age should you start to see public executions? An immediate comment on that is, killing is bad. You should avoid killing people. You should avoid killing people in self-defense, you should avoid wars, and you should most definitely not sentence anyone to death. And if that's bad, it's also bad to now try to excuse your radicalism and extremism that you were supposedly driven to by the recent events. When you say those liberals were always aggressive and violent, we have to shoot back. We need to kill them. Whoever shot Kirk needs to be killed, and publicly at that. The right has their feelings hurt and they continue to pretend like they're civilized until they find an excuse to drop the mask and drop the act. Them saying, "I'm being radicalized, we need to do something about this," is inciting violence against their political opponents, quite frankly. Why would you want the death penalty? To make them hurt, to make them upset, to make them scared. However, studies actually show that the thing that deters people from crime most effectively is the swiftness of punishment, not its severity. Meaning it doesn't matter if the penalty for theft or murder is a loss of hand or a loss of life of the perpetrator, if they never catch him, or if it takes them years to catch the guy. If you're immediately caught for piracy or jaywalking, that will deter you more. Facts don't care about your feelings. Now back to the quotes. The Democrat Party supports everything that God hates. I can't stand the word empathy, actually. I think empathy is a made-up new age term that does a lot of damage. Reject feminism. Submit to your husband, Taylor. You're not in charge. And we're gonna talk about Taylor today as well. You might want to crack open that Bible of yours. In a lesser referenced part of the same part of scripture is in Leviticus 18, is that thou shalt lay with another man shall be stoned to death. Just saying. So, Miss Rachel, you quoted Leviticus 19. The chapter before affirms God's perfect law when it comes to sexual matters. Another one. It's not a great replacement theory, it's a great replacement reality. Of course, the classic, it's just a theory fallacy. Just this year, 3.6 million foreigners will invade America. 10 to 15 million will enter by the end of Joe Biden's term. Each will probably have 3 to 5 kids on average, while native-born Americans have 1.5 per couple. You are being replaced by design. This is astounding because he uses the phrase native-born Americans, which he means the whites from Europe, as opposed to, you know, the Native Americans. We also have Chuck on record talking about Second Amendment, saying, "I think it's worth it. I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights." With that again, you can't say that it's bad that he was shot to death. He just ended up being the unfortunate cost of some gun deaths this year so that the rest of you can keep your Second Amendment right. And this is a rule that he lived by and died for, right? You wouldn't imply that it was fine if somebody else's children were to die in a shooting so that he can keep his gun, but it would be bad if he died because of it, would you? On that note also, all those guns available to all of you, and yet his death was not prevented. Your pistols, open or concealed carry, or even assault rifles, weren't enough to get the guy before he fired his shot? Now I know it's not an assault rifle unless it's got a selector switch between semi and automatic, but the point stands. A firearm is a massive force multiplier, and the shooter was not only equipped for a long-range shot, he also had the element of surprise. You'd be willing to ban scopes, you'd be willing to ban ladders so that no one can climb a roof to take a shot like that, but you will never require anyone to undergo a psych eval in order to qualify for a firearm license. And lastly, on Martin Luther King Jr. MLK was awful. He's not a good person. He said one good thing he actually didn't believe. Do not forget that he also ran damage control for Elon Musk, when our phony Stark expressed his happiness about becoming the first buddy with a Nazi salute. No, it wasn't the salute, he was just giving his heart out to the people. These are the moderate takes of a rightist conservative theist Charlie Kirk. And if this is mild and moderate, you can only imagine how radical everyone who says this is mid is. He's not a good person, and he's not become better just because he died. Reminder for the people who share his beliefs that you really cannot be sad that he's dead, because you think he was a good person, so he surely must have gone to heaven and is now in paradise with God. And there is nothing stopping you from doing the same. It's already ordained by the Pope that suicide is not a sin, so you're not damning yourself if you decide to end your life. There is really nothing stopping you from just killing yourself and going straight to heaven. Because you also think that you're a good person, right? You wouldn't go to hell. And if you were, God will just have mercy on you. Jesus already died for your sins. And if somehow you're still worried that the word of the Pope is not valid enough, take it upon yourself to send other Christians to heaven. I'm sure in that case God will also consider your sacrifice and will reward you with a seat in the afterlife. If there is a proper context for owning people as slaves and committing genocide for it to be morally good, this would be a reason for you to go on a killing spree. Now, about the shooter, the law enforcement captured a few people first, who were, in fact, not the shooter. They eventually caught the right guy, supposedly, but before that they found the weapon and ammo. First curiosity being, the rifle was just a hunting rifle, as opposed to evil military assault rifle, which is supposedly an argument against gun control because these are the guns that you want and don't feel afraid of. And of course that's not the issue. It's not about what the gun is, it's about what the person is. It's not that any particular gun is any more evil than any other. It's that people should undergo psychological evaluation to be deemed responsible to own a firearm, as opposed to having a constitutional right to form a well-organized militia that needs guns. You don't have a well-organized militia, you've got police. This isn't Wild Wild West anymore. No one lives alone fending off raiders. The other curio is that the ammunition for the rifle had engravings on it, or writing. First reports said the text conveys anti-fascist and transgender ideology. First off, as if there's such a thing as transgender ideology. And second, what did the cartridges actually have on them? Glad you asked. One of them was a button press sequence for an attack in video game, another had an anti-fascist song, and most importantly, some of them had slogans like "Notice his bulges, OO," and OO is not a word, you shouldn't be reading it like OO. It's an emoticon, it's a cat's face. And if you're reading this, you're gay, Mao. So in essence, these phrases mock you for getting a hard-on and mocks you by implying you're a homosexual. These statements were then used as propaganda to say this is transgender ideology. If the guy wrote, "I hate the gays just like you," the result would have been the same. Oh, he's talking about the gays, he's a liberal, this is transgender ideology. Taking this opportunity, I would also like to mention a certain well-known political cartoonist that draws comic strips where the punchline is that the transsexual person hangs themselves and goes, "Ack." Well, who's "ack" in now? And since we've got a quote from Kirk saying women should stay in the kitchen and obey their owners, I mean husbands, let's talk about Taylor Swift. She got engaged, she's gonna get married. All the Swifties are going crazy. She did say in one of the interviews that she doesn't really have time for relationships on account of her being busy and popular, so she's doing the touring, the coming up with songs and recordings. I guess now things slow down. Alternatively, you can complain, why did it take her so long to find herself a man that she would like? The cynical question is, what's the issue? Did she think that no man would love her for who she really is, which is pretty, rich and talented, famous, recognizable? If the issue wasn't that she's such a romantic, self-centered narcissist, does it mean that she's gonna do less work now? Her career is over and the fans will not get any new music, since now she seems to have time for a relationship? Maybe, time will tell. Also, of course, it's always an option that she'll end up like Jennifer Lopez, having spent her youth on work and career, and now she's 4 divorces in. Well, hope Taylor Swift won't prove Charlie Kirk right, even if her relationship falls apart anyway, and she decides she's not gonna bother, and she's happy as she is. That's also valid. When it comes to gaming, amazing event, Nintendo has patented summoning creatures to fight, but only in US. Not only is it retarded that they would come up with an idea like that, it's even more retarded that someone would approve of it. They're now basically free to hit anyone with cease and desist or demand compensation. And it doesn't just go for Pal World that they're having a legal battle with right now, but also they can go after D&D and Conjurer Wizards, or World of Warcraft where you can summon an elemental. Even Digimon, Yu-Gi-Oh! And that's their playing field, that's their backyard. They do have Pokemon trading card game. Yep, United States of America, the land of the free. Free market, capitalism, corporations. This shouldn't have gone through. You don't get to patent a gameplay. You don't get to patent a word like "mk" or "react." You don't get to continue to prolong copyright over characters that should have got into public domain tens of years ago just to make more money. And yet they do. And yet it keeps happening. And what is a person to do about it? Well, you ask for this. You thought capitalism is a form of government. I'm sure the strong invisible hand of the free market will fix this. We wouldn't want the government to get bigger so that it includes those issues in its jurisdiction. And since we're talking about Pokemons, I finished playing Typhlosion deck with win-loss of 2.3, though at one point it was 11.5. And I did want to keep pushing it in ELO rankings, but when I dropped from 1570, I wanted to stay at that level with a different deck, because I also have other decks to play. And I reached for a Qian Pao deck that took 3rd place in some sort of a tournament. And it started off nicely, but it ended up at 1.38. All the game bugs didn't help either, when I couldn't draw the cards that I wanted, because you just couldn't select the given card, or a massive window saying Pokemon TCG needs to reconnect to the internet, even though you could see your opponent playing their turn, making their moves, drawing their cards, passing it over to you and waiting for you to do something. Clearly the connection is there, why do I need to reconnect? That loses you points, by the way, of course. And this shit is just spiraling out of control, essentially. I'm also giving a go to a Gardevoir Jellicent deck that's not doing too well. I've got Tunnel Vision trying to use the Jellicent to block the enemy from using items and tools, but I guess this is only a backup, a support. I should be playing Screaming Tail instead more often, to take knockouts and prizes. However, the deck doesn't really have a Bravery charm that you can put on your basic Pokemon to give him more hit points, so you can damage him more, so the attack deals more damage because it deals as much damage as you've got markers on you. Maybe the deck is just not that good. Also trying to finish off Zekrom and Archeldon with Team Rocket Bomb, but the daily quests continue to ask you for playing electric or fire Pokemon due to Zekrom and Reshiram decks, and Jellicent nor Archeldon have any of those typings in the deck. Back to the topic of the week, other than the anniversary of 9/11. I don't know about you, but my Xitter feed is about to be bogged down with a lot of conservative takes, especially since I engaged with some of them trying to challenge their views. No wonder this platform is full of echo chambers. I don't really know if responses to posts are organized by date or engagement, but I don't know what's worse when you're trying to challenge their rhetoric. That no one sees your response, no one bothers to look, or that their arguments are as vile as they accuse the other side of being. You'll see a lot of, see what they've done, they're vile, they're inhuman, immoral, and we have no idea why would they be like that. What they've done has radicalized me now, and we should respond to this act of violence, starting with publicly executing the assassin. If only my platform was big because I was popular, I'd have a bigger chance of those people actually coming across my tweets and try to engage me because they got mad about what I wrote. Cause otherwise trying to talk is just not working, either because of the algorithms or their unwillingness to actually have a discussion, which of course would be very ironic. I think to get out of this avalanche of trash that you might be inundated with after getting yourself into it is to try to click posts that you would actually be interested otherwise, some mild, innocuous and unpolitical that you were doing before this happened. In other news, tea was on my mind, and I don't mean the slander applications that I already talked about in this playthrough. I mean the actual herbal brew, the packaging specifically. Since sliced bread, someone came up with an idea that you can sell already portioned packets of the leaves instead of needing to have you measure the amount every time you try to get a drink, and also then deal with the leftovers. They decided we can put it in a paper bag and you just throw the whole thing in, steep it in water and then throw the whole thing out. No fuss, no muss. But then it seems like the experts, the people who decided to make an art out of it, or who already thought that this is a crime against the art of brewing and drinking tea, the ritualists got that product and poured over it, get it? Thinking, if only we can make this better. This isn't good enough. And as you surely know, a tea bag is just a paper tube with a measured amount of tea leaves inside that's closed off on both ends to keep the tea from spilling. But the bag is not big, the paper is in the way, so the water flow is restricted and it's hard to extract the essence from the leaves. Since the problem often is area of effect, someone came up with the idea to increase the surface area of the tea bag. And instead of having just one tube closed off on both ends, you can pre-close the tube in the middle, effectively creating something of a torus, which would allow the currents of the warm water to flow through the middle of the cluster of tea for better extraction. However, the problem of course is that it's a paper bag already folded, and if you throw that into a cup of water, the inner walls of the tubes will just stick together and you're back to square one when it comes to surface area. What you can try doing is sticking a teaspoon in between those packets to keep them from closing, but then arguably now the spoon is in the way and the bags are gonna stick to that. The companies did experiment with different shapes of the bag, like for instance a shape of a pyramid, but I don't think that helps much if the structure isn't rigid. It will still collapse in on itself and stick together. Truly, first world problems. Anyway, Shank 2 final level. Turns out General Magnus is hanging out on some construction site, for some reason, not like he's got a country to run apparently. We start off with a large combat encounter, and not much later we get another that's also spiced up with some environmental obstacles. Not only in the form of a gas tank that can blow up and you could utilize to get your enemies with, but also with a massive wrecking ball hoisted up from a crane. We've experienced that already before, so there might be some sort of expectation that you know how to deal with this. But first off, it might trick you that it's some sort of a mini-boss. They would throw one so early, as if it's the final level, which is supposed to be hard, as it's a culmination of everything you've learned so far. But no, it wasn't. Well, after this combat section you can go to the left to free more prisoners for your achievements, and you can see me doing a little bit of a cheeky healing, because item activation is proximity based and the game doesn't check for collisions at that point. It doesn't teleport you up there, but it does put you in the drinking animation, so at least there's an option to capitalize on the resource you would have otherwise lost. Also, only just now we've gotten to a checkpoint, which seems like being in the 2/3 of the level, as opposed to being somewhere in the middle, similarly to the previous resort stage. We also get another title card again, telling us that we've reached a different area. Here, however, we do in fact get a mini-boss, which is a missile launcher. And as if it's supposed to be hard, you're supposed to manage the turret's heat, the incoming missiles, and also incoming enemies that can run up to you and punch you off of the platform, making you hardly able to defend anymore against the rockets that come in sequence. So it's hard to dodge and rely on invincibility frames too. But there are also shooters, and it's the machine gunners at that. Now, who would have thought the final stretch of the game would be hard, on hard difficulty? I was trying to do the best I can, with the fewest deaths, but once you hit the checkpoint, it's really annoying to restart the whole game trying to be basically flawless again. Also, of course, when you go through this for the first time, you don't know what's ahead, so you can't plan for the use of supplies, which not only include the healing items, but also the munitions. So in my case, as usual, it's a challenge run. And it's a no consumables category. It's also not helpful that when I try to utilize something with area of effect like a Molotov cocktail or a grenade, Shank just chucks it at the nearest guy instead of the biggest group. Especially when it comes to a firebomb. It doesn't create sort of an explosion effect that would reach people all around. It just breaks on contact, sets one guy on fire, and leaves a barely usable effect on the ground for a little while. Also, as you see, apparently in theme of massive explosions, we seem to get a grenade launcher with incendiary rounds, because it shoots fireballs. You would think it's a flamethrower instead. However, it has a very discrete number of ammo, being 15. And other than the tooltip that shows up for the first time when we use a machine gun turret, telling us that we might possibly pick that up and carrying it with us, and also an achievement requiring you to pick it up and throw it at someone, this is the only pickup weapon that's ranged, a firearm. So you will see me struggling like a dumbass trying to find the button that fires that. Squares still does the quick attack. When you pick up any other weapon, it becomes the heavy attack with the triangle, but this being a gun responds to the circle shoot button. Immediately after that we get large enemies with shields that we can pick up, which is also a novelty. A guy with a shield that you break with a heavy attack is a common foe throughout the game, but this time it's the only quote weapon unquote that you use solely for defense. And you again do get a tooltip about how to actually use it, because we've never come across that. This is a very important gauntlet, because here, at almost the end of the game, the devs introduce one more type of enemy, which is a minigun turret that comes out of the wall. And it's important solely because they have to teach you how to deal with them, or rather give you an opportunity to figure it out, so that the boss fight is not gonna feel cheap. And really, they brought this on themselves, because also no one required them to use this type of new enemy in the final battle. A good thing for the player is that the fire from these guns actually hurts other enemies, so you can use them to your advantage. Another excuse is probably the other game mode being survival, where you just try to survive for as long as possible, so they'll just throw everything they've got against you, and some of the enemies might have been created specifically for that mode and just added to the campaign, also so that you are forced to familiarize yourself with that. However, even though the turrets help you in this encounter, they do not in fact affect the boss. However, to that, the boss has a different mechanic, where he'll eventually throw pipe bombs on the floor of the incendiary variety. And even though he himself doesn't trigger them, you can trigger them, and the pools of fire will burn the boss. It's weird anyway. They specifically teach you that these guns affect the NPCs, and this is the only learning opportunity you get with them, but they teach you wrong on purpose, just like in Kung Pao.
He's in the elevator.
We finally got him.
Similarly to this final enemy introduced at the end of the game, so we can have an opportunity to experience it through the story mode, Corina exists only so you can practice with her a little bit in one level, learn her moves and gear, so that someone can play her in co-op. This is a long and dense one, so thanks for watching, hopefully you enjoyed and hopefully we will see each other in something I play for you for free. In the meantime, of course, interact with this video and every other video on my channel, preferably by watching and sharing it with your friends. Check out the RGB rave around the like and subscribe button, and if you don't like the content, it's entirely your fault. A reminder that Magnus is a warlord who seems to have staged a military coup to take over wherever we are, and the plot is that he's got a weak heart.
Your time is over, Magnus. Let's see what you got.
And now this giant mountain of muscle is gonna fight with us in hand-to-hand combat. Seeing his physique, I'd argue his heart problems come directly from abuse of steroids. On top of that, his condition would mean that we can basically just run in circles around him, and soon enough he'll just have a cardiac arrest and die. Or the opposite, his heart will just explode. And this is foreshadowing. In his second stage, he pulls out two chainsaw knives, straight out of Warhammer 40k, clearly. And the joke is not only that this is the weapon that this guy wields, he also is the size and durability of a Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine. Comparatively, he could use Shank's actual chainsaw as a knife, and Shank could use his knives as his chainsaw. But there is a little bit of a fucky-wucky going on, where in the final cutscene, our protagonist uses them for a finisher, and they just magically shrink to his size. Annoyingly, Magnus has a move that can't be dodged through him, and that did catch me off guard. It would be cool if Dark Souls didn't steal that from Klei.
Have mercy on an old man. Fuck you. It is done. Magnus is dead.
Shank, wait, I have someone who wants to speak to you. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for finding me. I always knew you were a good man. A great man.
Taking 2 attempts at the final boss on hard isn't too bad, I think. Oh, but who's that talking on the radio? Is that our foster mother that ended up actually not dying? She was just pretending, she only lost consciousness, and no one bothered checking? Not that that would change much, Shank was already on a warpath. Kidnapping would be a good enough excuse for him anyway. And like I wrote in the description of the first video in this playthrough, I could have used a sample from the song Re-Education, where the lyrics go, like causes without rebels. The joke being, Shank now joins the rebellion and becomes the leader for the cause. But it turns out that "You're Going Down" fits well even on a meta level, as I tend to make it. It's an arcade game, it's all about the score. This is hardly worth fighting for, but it's a little petty shit that I can't ignore. So I might or might not post a pic showing how I improved my results compared to the episodes in this playthrough.